Well done.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. As I said, this is session 3. First session was planning, programming and physical preparation, an overview. That was very much an overview session. Session 2 was the bars, vault and some upper and mid conditioning. And today we're doing beam, floor and physical prep. We won't be covering choreography. Choreography is very difficult to cover via Zoom. But we'll be going through the skill set and skill development parts of beam, floor and physical preparation for WAG level 3 and 4. So as I said before, at any time, if you have a question, just unmute yourself. I'm happy to stop. Please don't think it's a silly question. I'm sure everybody's thinking the same thing. So just ask and we'll definitely work through it together. Okay, Sarah, let's start with session 1, with screen 1. Okay. Welcome everybody. We're going to have a little bit of a look today at some complex and drills for level 3 and 4 WAG athletes. We'll look at some lower body conditioning and flexibility. And then as mentioned in session 1 and session 2, most athletes at level 3 have done 12 months of training prior to being in the level 3 squad or team or group in your club. Some of them have only done 12 months. Some of them may have done level 1 for 12 months and then level 2 for 12 months, depending on the club structure, obviously, and where they sit, where the program sits. But they should all have some basic fundamentals to fall back on. We see lots of different age ranges of kids at level 3 and 4. We see some very tiny little kids, 6 and 7-year-olds, and then we see some older kids as well. Some clubs train once a week for 2 hours at level 3 and 4, and some clubs train obviously more than that, depending on where it sits in the club structure. So when we do some programming and when we're looking at planning a session for beam, floor or any physical preparation, handstands or even vault and bars, we need to ask ourselves a few questions first so we can get straight in our head what we need to do. The first thing we need to ask obviously is the age and level of our athletes. You've got 10 little faces standing in front of you. Some of them are young, some of them are a little bit older, some of them are quite physically gifted. Others have come straight from a rec program or a teenage program. So we need to first decide what the little people are in front of us and where they've come from, what kind of programming and levels and hours have they been doing. What is the length of each apparatus rotation and what equipment is available to us? So obviously what you can fit in a 40-minute bar rotation, you're not going to fit in a 20-minute bar rotation. So you'll need to, and some of us are not in control of that area of the program. Some of us have head coaches and supervisors who plan the rotations. And then they determine how long you are at the beam or how long you get on the tramp or how long the conditioning rotation is and so on. Just remember that it takes a few weeks to work out where all your little ones are, especially at level 3 and 4. They've probably got quite diverse level 1 and 2 experience. Some of them not doing a lot of hours, some might have been doing more hours, some younger, some older. So just take some time to get to know your squad first. I kind of write myself when I do this level, I write myself like an interim program. And I look at that program and I implement it first couple of weeks, which is usually very early in the year, January or February. And I implement the program, and then from that over about a 2-week period, I can work out where they are all at, what the weaknesses are, what the strengths are, and how to write a program that's going to suit and challenge all of them. So give yourself a little bit of time is my advice when you first start with a new squad. All right, thank you, Sarah. We'll do page 2, slide 2. Okay, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about complex as we move along. So I thought we better first take a bit of a look about what complex is. I love complex. Complex is my most favourite thing to do on all apparatus. And complex is a term used to describe a set of gymnastics, drills and basic skills commonly used as an apparatus warm-up or group of activities that reinforce sound technical development. So basically it's the first part of your apparatus. It's usually the warm-up or parts of the warm-up, or it's going to be used differently when you're in season where you need to do routines. Perhaps you do a smaller complex or lesser complex, and you do more when you're in your skill development part of the program. But basically a complex is the warm-up, or it's something that you would like to implement into your program to set up a good level of basics. And that can be used right from level 1 right up to level 10. And on beam, today, in terms of today's context, on beam, it can be flexibility complex, posture, releve, jump, sleeps, choreo, and acro. And on floor, flexibility, dance, turns, jump, sleeps, choreo, and acro. So the best thing I think about complex is it's personal to the coach. You can develop what's needed for your squad, but you can also develop what you think is important in terms of sound development moving forward and build that every day into their session. So it can be a 2-minute complex, 5-minute complex, 10-minute complex. From my perspective, if they're doing routines and they're approaching a competition, I keep my complex quite short meaning less than 5 minutes on beam and floor. If they're not in a competition season, I put a whole lot more basics in their program and a whole lot more skill development in their program. So I probably spend 10 to 12 minutes of a rotation. So, but it will depend on what part of the year and kind of where you're sitting at in terms of learning your routines, or the routines have been learned and need to be polished and things like that. So that's what a complex is. A complex saves time. Love it because it saves time. You can do all of your beam warm up at level 4 in a 5-minute complex that you've sat down and developed yourself. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so straight to beam programming. So we're looking at level 3 beam, term 1, week 1 to 3. So the first thing we need to recognise about level 3 beam, term 1, week 1, is these kids are pretty much still level 2. They haven't done a level 3 training session at this point. They have probably had a little bit of a jump in hours at this point. They've probably come from level 2 where they've been doing between 2 and 5 hours a week. And they've probably had a little bit of a jump on that up to 6 or 7 hours a week. Maybe an increase, another session a week, or maybe just some extra time in existing sessions. So remember at this point that it does need to be quite basic. And this is the part of the program where you work out where your group sits. Okay, kids are going to have different strengths and weaknesses. So at this point in weeks 1 to 3, you keep everything quite simple. You cover some basics that you feel should have been covered in level 2, and then you work out from there how to move forward with your program from week 4 and onwards. So I've broken all of this down into 3 areas: complex, leaps and jumps, and acro and dismounts. And when I say dismounts, I also mean mounts, but because the mounts aren't terribly technical at level 3 and 4, I'm just going to group mounts down there in that acro dismount column. So in terms of complex, 5 minutes. Complex for me is caterpillars. I don't know what any of you, we all call things differently, but caterpillars is for me standing with feet together on the beam, flat feet, hands down in front of their feet on the beam. Then they walk their hands forward and stop in front support. So the legs stay straight and they stop in a nice tight front support. And then their hands stay still and then they walk their feet into their hands. So it's kind of like, I think some people call it inchworm and some other things, but I call it caterpillars, and I really like it because it's really good for the core, and I really like it because it gives the hamstrings quite a reasonable stretch. And when you're doing a lot of kicking and leaping and jumping and things on beam, you definitely want to make sure there's some kind of stretching done before we approach all of that. So caterpillars, I usually do 2 rows. If I've got a little tiny baby squad with 7-year-olds, I'd probably do 1 row because it takes them quite a while to work out that they can't move their hands and feet at the same time. And it takes a little while for them to understand that legs are straight, and that can be quite difficult. So then we do some releve holding, which is kind of like the picture that you can see there, except probably feet closer together. I think she's probably walking along the beam, but releve with arms side middle, hips tucked under, belly in, legs tight, ankles tall, and probably feet a bit closer together. Then I just do some basic walking, and I can tell from walking with flat feet who will be able to adapt well to the releve program and who's going to need to do a bit more work flat feet. Then in the leaps and jumps area, we do straight jumps. Now, before I teach a straight jump with a level 3 in week 1 of term 1, I make sure that they've got the arm positioning correct. So I actually eliminate jump first and I do the positioning. So I do the 5 positions of a straight jump, starting with standing tall, then the arm swing with the bent knees, then rise to releve arms, swing up, which is simulation of the jump, and then the land position, hips tucked under, arms out to the side or in front, or however you like your arm positions on land, and then stand pulling arms back with tight legs. So I actually eliminate the jump first. It doesn't take girls long usually to work out that kind of a technique and how we need to do it, and then we add the jump once they're understanding all the arm positioning and the jump positions. The other thing I look at is feet. A lot of little kids will do a straight jump on beam with their feet side by side, which is not ideal. So I just make sure that they've got one foot in front of the other, not too far in front of the other, but a reasonable space so that they can learn to jump with beam feet.
I don't have any bread.
Single leg demi-plie hold. So that's a standing with a start position with a pointed foot in front. Bend the leg that they're standing on, holding arms still out to the side, like in the picture here, and then lifting that leg in front, like a lead up drill before they've done the lead up drill. So just that early start position, which is what that single leg demi-plie is. I just get them to hold that position because usually there's not a lot of control with kids who haven't done a lot of hours of gymnastics or kids that are young. The dancers do it very well. Sometimes we get some older kids in level 3 who are dancers and they can do the single leg demi-plie well, but just hold for 2 seconds and maintaining posture. And then some passe steps forward. So that would just be starting with a passe toe at knee out to the side, move the knee to the front and step. And then the same on the other leg. That's what that is in rows. Then for the acro and the dismounts, I like, again, very early in the term for level 3 and 4, I check hand positioning. Now, every coach has different ways of hand placement on the beam for acro skills. For bunny hops or for any handstand elements, I like not just thumbs on the beam. I like hands, one finger forward. I don't know if everybody can see my hands, but one finger forward and one thumb on the beam. I feel this gives a greater base of support on the beam and allows for better control. So I check while they're bunny hopping their way along the low beam or high beams or whatever you've got set there, I definitely at that point check hand placement and finger placement and also head, making sure that their head's not too far out. So just understanding before they do a handstand, those are the things that I like in place as a technical thing. Okay, then some straight jump dismounts. So I realize it's a punch jump for level 3, but I start with some straight jumps because remember, my group's very new. I haven't seen them do a lot of gymnastics. So I just need to understand their aerial awareness. So we do some straight jumps and some jump to front support, which is part of the mount. Then over on the side, while they're waiting or while I'm helping on the low beam, they go and do L handstand on the line on the floor. So that will just help them a little bit when we get to doing that on a beam, because sometimes that can be a bit scary. So we do a lot of that for 3 weeks on a line. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Then weeks 4 to 6, we've got 3 weeks now. They've been in the gym. They've been with you as their coach. They're doing a little bit more hours, so they've adjusted a little bit to that and working out not being tired from school and coming to the gym. So we can kind of work moving forward now a little bit, but also we need to keep some basics the same so that it's continually reinforced. So we start with complex. Caterpillars I always do, as I said, because I like the stretching element and the core and control element, caterpillars. Then we do a forward passe on 1 foot. So this is just some holding. So this is good because you can spread them out, all out across the beams. If you've got 5 beams or 2 beams or 3 beams or whatever you've got, low beams, medium beams, high beams, you can spread them all out and they stand with a forward passe being the triangle toe at knee forward. I like arms down. I know there are coaches who like arms up in 5th position, but I like arms down. And then we just hold that passe position on the flat foot for 15 seconds. And then we do some rises. Now, this is quite difficult for a level 3 athlete. They usually don't have a good amount of control, don't have a good amount of calf strength. So this can be quite difficult and they'll wobble around a little bit, but they will get better as you move forward. And then I would move the walking that we did on flat feet for the last 3 weeks. I'd put that on releve now because they should have a good understanding of some releve. Then the next part is leaps and jumps, some straight jumps. They should now be able to do 2 in a row, because for 3 weeks, we've been doing just 1 jump. So 2 jumps, although it might not be pretty to start with, I would definitely start moving towards jump, jump, and single leg demi-plie hop and stop. So instead of just holding the position, we're now doing a little hop and stopping. We're not doing a lead up drill at this point. We're still maintaining posture and control. Then single leg demi-plio, step to scale on the side. So this is just the lead up drill without the hop. So they lift their front leg in front of them, they bend the leg they're standing on, and they hold their leg in front of them. Then they put the leg that's out straight on the beam, and then they do a scale position to finish and just hold that for 2 seconds, which, believe me, at level 3 is harder than it sounds, because they just don't have that good hip flexor control. So sometimes they can struggle a little bit with holding that back leg up off the beam in scale. So I put all of that without the hop first, which is why that's an extra on the side. Then with our acro, we do some bunny hops, some more L handstands on a line. So by this point, for week 4, 5, and 6, they should have the arms and technique correct that you've asked them to do on the line. Then I would start on a low beam or a floor beam, or some of those beams that maybe fold out. I would put a box, and I would have them have handstand with their hands on the beam in an L handstand shape with 1 foot on the box, so the bottom leg on the box. So they're actually holding a handstand. Now this will need you to stand, if they're doing it on a beam, even a low beam, you will need to make sure you're standing fairly close. If they're doing it on a floor beam or a fold out beam, you could probably have them do it as a side station, but I would make sure that the shaping at this point is correct and that they're not changing their hands around. So I like them to hold that. Then we do some clear straddle holds, which is part of their mount. I understand at level 3 they don't have to hold it for a specific time, but it's actually a good working towards level 4 and 5 and the rest of it if they can do some clear straddle holding. Handstand levers. Handstand levers to lunge. This is a handstand entry without hand support. So starting with a point in front, arms up, lunge forward, arms at ears. So they go to like a scale position, like a bent leg scale position, and then they go back to a lunge. So they're not actually putting their hands on the beam, they're just doing a lever. So point, lunge, mark the scale position, make sure there's no segments in the body, and then back to a lunge. Sometimes that's a little bit tricky, but that handstand levers are excellent if you're trying to teach step in. They're having trouble doing handstand step in. I find levers as a side station work really well for them to understand no segments in the body, and for them to not actually have that hand support helps as well. Do I see a couple of questions, Sarah, in the chat?
Yeah, a few have come in from Sharon. I think it's just a comment. She said single leg demi plie when finishing in scale, do the straightened leg before closing feet. So I think it's just an emphasis on the technique there. And
single leg demi, when finishing in the scale, do they straighten the leg before closing? I think that's obvious. Yeah, I think that's, sorry, I've just clicked on chat and worked out how to do it. I would probably have them do scale, and then I would have them go from the scale to step finish. So back leg of the scale, the leg that's not on the beam, step forward to finish. I think that probably simulates a leap. But look, you can do close to releve, you can do step in front to releve, you can straighten the leg and close like a step in. I'd probably do a few different ones. Given that they're only in level 3, control is usually the issue. They're usually quite wobbly. They don't have a great amount of body tension. So look, working what works for you is probably best. If you've got something, a technical thing that you want them to do further down the track and you need them to close feet and straighten the leg and close the feet, or finish in a releve or a step finish, definitely. But I think that's kind of a bit of a preference for you within your program. I would do step forward and finish like a leap would finish, because eventually the lead up will become the leap. And I find that if they know the positioning early, it's much easier for them to be able to work it out when they actually leap in the air. The single leg plio step scale, how are the arms? I have arms to the side. I know that there are a lot of coaches that I've worked with who like opposite arms. And I like opposite arms on split jumping and things, different things, switch leaps, zones. But for this drill, I have arms out to the side. So they start with their arms out to the side in a point position. They lift one leg in front, bend the support leg, and then they step forward, bend the front leg, straighten the back leg and lift it off the beam and mark the scale position. All of that with arms at the side is what I like. But again, up to you. If you find, I find that it gives a more of a stabilizing effect, arms at the side with these drills. Arms up or arms down, I tend to find with little kids or kids who haven't done a lot of gymnastics, the control is the issue. So if I add arms at the side, it kind of works that out. Does that answer everyone's question? Does anyone have a question and want to take themselves off mute? No? All good?
Looks like that's all, Linda.
All good. Thank you, Sarah. So handstand levers to lunge are excellent when you're going to try and get your little level 3s or level 3s to do some stepping in. So that's a side station. They can do that on a line on the floor. They can do it on a flip out beam. They can do it on a low beam. They can do it on a high beam. It's a safe thing for them to do. You don't need to spot them. So it is actually a really good handy thing to have in your circuit. Thanks, Sarah. Week 7 to 10. Okay, so now we've had 6 weeks with our new level 3 squad. We've worked out the strengths and the weaknesses, so we can start moving on a little bit now. And remember, as you get to the 7th week of your beam program, they've also been doing 6 weeks of your warm-up and your prep program and your conditioning and your handstand programs. So the form will start to improve at this point. The form will start to get better. The control will start to get better as well. So again, with my complex, I keep the caterpillars in there, and I do caterpillars with level 3 and 4 always. Releve walking forward. So I design a little complex of my own at this point because I've had 6 weeks to work with conditioning and control and where they're at and what the strengths and weaknesses are. So at this point, I develop my own complex. So this is my complex that I've written here that I would do for level 3s. Walk forward, 4 steps. So arms would be at the side. Stand releve with arms up. So that would be 1 foot behind the other, like a straight, tall position. 5 ankle rises on whichever foot they've got in front. Then put the other foot in front and do 5. And then releve walk forward, and I would do the same thing backwards. So I don't know, it's very hard for me to explain all this when I don't have a little person to show you with, but that's just my little level 3 complex that I would do. It's all on releve, and it's got those rises in the middle for them to be able to develop how to use their releve. And then also some holding. So some as opposed to kick fast and get to a certain range of movement and return to point to the beam, I'm doing my kicking in a hold position. So they step and basically lift their leg and hold it there, which is very hard for them to do. And I like putting that in programs pretty early for level 3 and 4. I think it's a really good control drill, but I also believe it's really good for their flexibility as well to be doing some holding. And I would do that forward and backward. I wouldn't be introducing side at that point. Probably put side in term 2, but definitely not in term 1, because to hold their leg out to the side, they're going to compensate with their posture. And I don't want them doing that. In term 1, I want their posture nice and straight and then learning how to use their muscles. So I only have forward and backward. Leaps and jumps, straight jumps times 2, 5 of those. They should be starting to get a little bit more amplitude off the beam. Leg form should be improving. Body tension should be improving at that point. Single leg step hop to land in demi-plie. Stop 2 seconds on both legs. So that's kind of the leap first part of the leap lead up. But I would be doing it with both legs. So they start with point, they stand at the end of the beam, start with a point, step forward, do a little hop and stop in the single leg demi-plie, and then step on the next leg and hop and then stop. And it's all about control for me, which is why I've got the stop 2 seconds in there, so that they can understand that they have to maintain arms correct, head correct, posture correct, all of those things correct. Passe walks with releve rise on the turn leg. So we would probably start putting in some positioning at this point. So I don't think they need to lunge for their turn on beam at level 3 and 4. I believe it's a point start position on beam. So I'd get them in the start with the nice point and the nice arms. Then I would do passe walks, but on the leg that's their dominant leg, the leg that they turn on, I would start doing rise, perhaps hold at the top and lower, and then step forward again. Here, acro and handstand, acro and dismounts, L handstand still on the box at the end of the beam at this point. If they're doing it on a flip out beam or on a line on a floor, or at this point, I would make sure that they were coming on a low beam. I would put a box of reasonable height to the size of the child at the end of the beam, and they would put their hands on the beam, one leg directly above their head, which you would need to spot probably, and then the bottom leg on a box so that they're actually in an L handstand shape on a beam, but with the support of the box. And then some more levers, and I would probably start looking at doing lever to step in on the floor and lever to lunge on the beam. Then jump to front support and leg over, clear straddle hold 2 seconds. I'd probably be expecting at this point that their toes are going to start to lift a little higher in line with their hips, as opposed to when you first started 6 weeks ago, their legs are probably pointing down at the floor. And then some punch jumps on the line on the floor. I'd never start with these on a beam. I have worked with coaches who like it on the beam in the first instance. I don't. I think this is a confusing punch element for a level 3 child. So I always start on the line on the floor. And then if they seem to have grasped the hang of the feet, because initially they will jump with their feet together, which obviously they can't do on a beam. So I make sure that the feet are staggered how I need them on the line on the floor. And then I would put them on a low beam. I'd put a panel mat or a box that's the same height as the beam at the end of the beam. And I'd just get them to do a little punch on the low beam and land on the box, which is the same height as the low beam. It can be a crash mat, can be something soft as well, it doesn't have to be a box. And I would just make sure that their feet are correct and that they're understanding that it's a punch jump, not a running straight jump, which they tend to do when they're in the very early stages of learning. Well, that's the end of the level 3 beam program. So that's a whole term program there. Obviously, we coach for the whole year. So there's terms 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to give you some progressions as we move through these slides that I would move to as part of level 3 beam. But I've basically done a 10-week program for level 3 and a 10-week program for level 4. So that should get everybody started. So if we move to the next slide, Sarah, I will give you some progressions for level 3 just after we finish the beam session. So we're going to do level 4 beam. So level 4 probably had an increase in hours, or probably had some session times looked at in terms of length. So they might have been training 2-hour sessions at level 3, and now they're going to do 3 hours at level 4. So remembering again that this is term 1, week 1. So this little level 4 squad standing in front of you are very much still level 3s and haven't started their training as yet. So you're going to need to work out as a coach what the strengths and weaknesses are. Complex caterpillars, I would do walking on releve because they have done 12 months probably of level 3. Not all of them will have done 12 months. Some of them may have moved forward a little bit faster, but walking on releve, forwards, backwards, and sideways shouldn't be an issue. I do 2 rows forward, 2 rows backwards, and 2 side. They do the step, kick, hold, forward, backwards, side. The side is going to lack a little bit of control. But as I said with the level 3 program, I think they need to do some side holding at level 3, just not in term 1. So they should, as a level 4 athlete, have done a little bit of side holding. And that's as much about flexibility and controlling that position as it is about having it in your program for posture and other reasons. Releve hold, arms present each leg. So that's 1 foot in front of the other because we're on a beam. Arms out at present, which is arms at the side, middle. Holding 20 seconds with the leg that they've got in front, left or right, and then changing legs, and then rises. So those are 2 foot rises, not single leg rises. And that's just to reinforce a little bit of releve so I can see where they're at. And from that positioning, I can see who's done a lot of releve work and who hasn't, who's got good control over their posture, who's got good body tension, who understands the arm positions, head positions, and so on. And that's why that's in the first couple of weeks of level 4. Then leaps and jumps. We've got single leg demi-plie hold and step to scale. So as a level 4 athlete, they should have gone through some level 3 holds in level 3. So at this point, I would get them to do the single leg demi-plie, hold 2 seconds and step to scale. So no hop. And that's just for me to be able to make sure that the arm positioning and the body position is correct before I ask them to hop, which makes things a bit more complicated. And then long jumps. Long jumps are standing with beam feet at the end of the beam, so their dominant leg in front, and then just jumping forward and stopping in a land position. So not a straight jump, a long jump. Now, when I say long jump, I don't mean, you know, really long as in 2 jumps fit in the length of a beam. I mean 4 or 5 jumps where they're moving forward and they're using their arms correctly. I like long jumps because they reinforce the land position of a jump. And I also like long jumps because they're very good at introducing the arm swing required to jump. Passe steps forward and side, so that's as per level 3, and then split jumps on a line, 10 of those, always on a line at first. Just remember with split jumps, when I teach a split jump and it's an early split jump with a little kid or an older kid who hasn't done a lot of split jumps, don't worry about the split. Take the split out of your mind to start with. Get all of your positioning right. Get the feet right, the arm swing right, the posture right. Work out which one's the dominant leg. If there are lefty dominant splits, then they're going to be a lefty split jump. And making sure that the feet and the land positions are correct as well, which is why I spend some time doing it on the floor before I do it on beam. Then for the acro, some bunny hops, because we're week 1, level 4, term 1, week 1. We need to make sure the hand positioning is correct. Again, I don't like just thumbs on the beam. I like the first finger as well on the beam. L handstand to lunge, they should be pretty good at because they've come from level 3. They may have some issues with some control on the step down or into the lunge, but they should be competent in an L handstand on a beam. And then some straight jump dismounts. I understand that level 4 is a backward straight jump, but I would start with some forward straight jumps just to make sure that you can see what they're capable of doing and what their body control and body tension is like. Then over to the mount on the right there, jump to front support, swing the leg over, clear straddle hold 3 seconds. I know it's 2 seconds. I like 3 seconds and I build from 3 seconds. And then some handstand levers to step in. Now they might need to do this. They would have done some handstand levers probably in level 3, so they're aware of what a handstand lever is. But to step in is a little bit different to lunge, because to step in, usually when they're not understanding the positioning, they'll put segments into their body and the lever will eliminate those segments and allow them to lift their shoulders as their back foot comes into a step in. So I do 5 of those. Sometimes level 4s, they're okay to go on the beam just to do that because they've done some at level 3. But if you are concerned, there's always plenty of lines on the floor. Put them on a line on the floor and reinforce the technique that you like there first and then put it on the beam. Thank you, Sarah. So now we've worked out how our group is and the strengths and the weaknesses, and this one's the legs are really strong and that little one's really flexible, so it doesn't have great control. So we've worked out our little squad now. And we're going to start moving forward. Remember, we're still very early stages, level 4. There's still very much level 3s at this point. Complex caterpillars and step kick point. So this is for full range of movement. So kick meaning kick to full range of movement as high as they can go and finishing with a point. Some level 4s will have a little bit of a lack of control, particularly when they kick quite fast and are required to use their muscles to stop in a point. But just if in doubt, don't compromise the technique to get the kick higher. Make sure the technique's correct first and then kick higher after that. That's what I find works for me. Side kicking is a little bit different. It's a little bit difficult. Now with the side kicking, I like side as in foot in front of hand. So hand should be kind of back past shoulders. Foot should come out to the side and in front of their hand. And then bringing back to point in front. But I know I've worked with coaches who like the step behind as well. So you guys need to work out what works for your program. And then some holding, which they should have actually some step kick holding, forward, backwards and side. They should have a fairly good grasp on this because they will have done level 3, plus they've done some in the first 3 weeks of the term. And the passe walks with a rise. So that's on both legs, standing at the end of the beam, step forward, side passe, forward passe, rise, step. And then the other leg, side passe, forward passe, rise and step. Leaps and jumps, straight jumps, they should have pretty good grasp on that, having come from level 3. Single leg demi-plie hop and then to scale. So that's actually the lead up itself. So they start with a point, they hop, finish in the single leg demi-plie, and then they step to the scale. Then we move down to long jumps. I have long jumps in every program, as you're about to see, in every program on beam. I like the landing position that's enforced from the long jump. I like that the jumps probably got less control, so they've got to be very aware of how to land on a beam with beam feet. Then some needle kicks with correct arms. So I would do this in a standing position first. So I wouldn't get them moving along in a row. So they start with a point. Their arms go down to their sides like an underarm and down to the beam, and their leg kicks up behind them. It's not going to be pretty at first. It's going to be a lot of wobbling around. It's not going to be particularly flexible, but understanding the positioning is kind of why I put it in there quite early. And I wouldn't have them moving along the beam. I'd have them maybe end to end, the child at either end of the beam, and starting with a point and making sure the arms and all of the posture things are correct. I would worry less about the flexibility at this point and more about understanding what the needle kick technique is. And then some split jumps on the low beam and on the floor line. So they've obviously been doing some split jumping probably at the end of their level 3, the year that they did level 3. So they should be okay now to be on a beam, even if it's a low beam. And if not, there's always space on the floor to do some split jumps. Again, don't stress about the split. Make sure that the technique is correct. Then the split will come as they get more flexible and more confident. And some handstand levers to step in. These should be fine to do on the beam at this point. So you start with your handstand start position, whether that's arms out, arms up, however you like to start your handstand. Lever forward to a scale standing on a bent leg, like a lunge simulation, and then stepping in. So they're understanding shoulders need to move in time with foot. Okay, and then the final part, final 3 to 4 weeks of the term. Next page, please, Sarah.
Yeah, Linda, you've just got a question.
Oh, sure.
From
Sorry.
Eleanor Turner. It says,
Sure.
do you need the bent leg as high as the picture? So the picture on the screen there.
Oh, the little girl. I would say the higher that you can get that knee in line with the hip, the better. I understand that at higher levels, there's all kinds of degrees of leg can be in different positions. But I think in terms of learning positions correctly, which is what we're trying to teach at level 3 and 4, I would have toe at knee and knee quite high, yes. So when they're standing in passe, that's a side passe. But if they were standing in forward passe, I would say to them as a group, you know, imagine that there's a bean bag and it's sitting on your leg and you don't want to drop the bean bag, so that they're enforcing that nice high, tall passe position. All good.
Great,
okay,
thanks.
does that answer the question? Sorry, Eleanor. Does that answer the question?
It looks like it. Didn't say anything
Yeah,
yet.
thanks, Linda. Yep.
No worries. And then we're moving on to weeks. Can you change the page? Thank you, Sarah. Then the final part of term 1 for level 4 beams. At this point, remembering we're not close to our competitions, so we are still doing some basics. We are doing some technique development. Caterpillars, and then I've got created my little complex for level 4 there. 2 kicks forward, 2 kicks back, 2 kicks to the side, 2 kicks in a needle position, and then from the second needle kick, we stand, rise up to releve with arms up above their head in a nice fifth position and hold 5 seconds. So that's generally 1 row with beam. I can generally get them to fit that in 1 row, and I would do 2 or 3 rows depending on how it looks. If they're getting on top of it pretty quickly, maybe only 2 rows, but if you find that they're not understanding the timing and the posture, maybe 3 or 4 rows. Passe walks with a rise, so that's as per the previous term, and a passe half turn times 5. So I would stand them in the start position that's required for level 4, which I believe is just like a point start position, arms out to the side. Then we do side passe and a half turn on 1 foot and stop and hold for 2 seconds. And that's usually the tricky part, not the half turn. They usually can do the turn, but they can't control the turn. So I actually add in the 2 seconds there that they have to hold it. So they do half turn, stop 2 seconds, and they do that 5 times. And believe me, that's very difficult in term 1 of level 4. You may need to shorten it down to 2 in a row and then step finish, and then do 3 or 4 of those, or you can do 5 in a row, but add in the hold, because I guarantee you that most of them will be able to turn, very few of them will be able to control the finished position. Leaps and jumps, straight jumps should be moving along quite well. You can even do them in rows at this point. So 2 rows of 2 straight jumps. Split jumps on the low beam, form should be starting to improve. Posture should be starting to improve. Once they've improved, I would work on the split position. Single leg demi-plie hop, and then leap to scale. So that's the lead up that's in there, that's in the routine. So they hop and stop on 1 foot, and then they jump to like a little stride leap, like a little tiny leap to finish in a scale. I would get them to hold the scale, because when you do this, the scale position, quite often, if they're not very strong, they'll drop that leg down straight away. So I would do like a momentary hold at scale and then step finish. And step finish can be as you see fit for your program. Long jumps again, just for that extra control. Ankle jumps are really difficult for level 4s, but I would start doing that, maybe do it in half rows. So ankle jumps meaning arms in front of them, shoulder height, squeeze bottom, and just little tiny bounces along the beam. Now they're going to be able to do 2 or 3, and then they're going to start wobbling because they don't have the core strength. But if you just build that up, generally it will improve quickly. And split jumps, of course, on the low beam. Kids who have a good grasp of this should be at the high beam even at this point. Acro and dismounts, L handstand step in, and front handstand step in on the low beam. So this can be, because the step in, usually they're willing to do the lunge bar, because that's what's come from level 3. But you have been doing all your handstand levers. So your handstand levers will help with the step in feet position. Once they have an understanding of the lever and the feet position, they can do it on the low beam or on a box or with spot, however you see fit, wherever they're up to. And then some backward straight jumps. Make sure the matting is at least, I think it's got to be 60 centimeters from top of the beam for their routine. So just making sure they've got a reasonably high landing area so that they don't hurt themselves. 5 handstand levers to step in. That can be on a high beam at this point. And the clear straddle holds for 3 seconds. With the clear straddle holds, they should now be able to balance bean bags on their feet without them sliding down to the floor. So you should see a reasonable amount of lift in terms of toes in line with hips. All good. So that's the end of the beam programming. So can you move to the next slide, please, Sarah? The progressions from because that's a term 1 program, and I realize we're coaching 4 terms. So then I start with that point and then I expand from there. So I would definitely recommend moving slowly to maintain posture and arm positions. Numbers need to have good form and good control, particularly at the end of term 1, it should be improving. And teach arm positions, which is why I love long jumps, which is why I love to make sure I go through the positioning of the straight jump in terms of arms without a jump. Make sure the arms are correct and how you want to see them. And that can be in leaps and jumps, opposite arms, arms to the side, arms down in turns, arms up in turns, however you like it to be, whatever works for you. But make sure they understand those arm positions, because you will have a greater amount of control on beam if their arms are in specific positions, not just flapping all around. Low beams to develop confidence, put mats over the beams, boxes at the end of the beam in line with the beam to simulate the beam, but with a wider surface. Don't be frightened of getting in and doing some spotting. I realise in times like at the moment, where we're all in lockdown and coming out of lockdown and into our gyms, where we're going to try and keep touching to a minimum. Things might change a little bit, but some spotting will pay dividends, particularly on the low beam. Body tension is the biggest gain at level 3. The skill set in level 3 is really quite basic for beam, but it's basic for a reason. This is the area, level 3 and 4, where they're developing the good beam habits that you'll want to put in place for level 5 to 10. So take time in that area and don't rush that area. Lines on the floor and the fold out beams that are actually made, I think they're made of foam or like a dense foam that you can get. They're actually really good for developing muscle memory. So use those to your advantage as well. And you can set them up. The good news about that is there's usually a little bit of space in your beam area where you can set them up and have them moving around so they're not standing still. Next slide, please, Sarah. These are the level 3 beam progressions. I'm not going to go through all of them because you're all going to get the PowerPoint and I want to try and get us all finished on time. But these are the things that I would add in slowly. So these are not things that I would put in all of this in term 2, week 1. These are things that I would gradually introduce into my program to make sure I'm moving on track from my level 3s to level 4 and from my level 4s to level 5. So caterpillars with a hip flex. So that's just the front support position. When they walk their hands out to the front support position, they dip their hips down to the beam, go back to the front support, then walk their feet in. That just adds another level of control that they need to have. Step, kick, snap, dip to single leg releve hold. So that's dip as in you would put in your rep program. Dip the leg down the side of the beam straight. And then as it swings forward, straighten both legs and stand on their toe, which is generally what you're asking them to do when you are introducing a full turn at level 5 and 6. They're going from a lunge position with a flat foot, they're straightening their leg and they're going up on their toe. So that's just a simulation of an entry of a full turn. Side passe to leg hold 45 below and into arabesque. So that's just going through a side passe, but probably a low foot position, probably closer to the ankle than up near the knee. And then just extending their leg in front of them. That's just a control drill and a turnout drill. And then lots of leaping, lots of jumps and introduction of leaps slowly. And then with the acro moving towards obviously their full handstands. And then working towards cartwheels onto the box. At probably in term 4, they can start doing cartwheels on the lines or cartwheels onto from the low beam onto a box, or you can start putting in your cartwheel technique things in there. But basically that's a good amount of progressions. Just build it in slowly. Don't do it all in the first 3 weeks of term 2. Just build it up slowly and as they are able to do it. Then to level 4 beam progressions. Can I have the next page, please, Sarah? Same. So similar to level 3, a little bit more in depth, a little bit more moving towards level 5 for our level 4s. Complex remains the same. I've added in some leg swings. You can see the 1, 2, 3, 4th column down on the left, leg swings, add scale at a finished position for leap landing drill. The leg swings is where they start with a point, lift their leg to 45 below in front, and then swing it backwards and bend the front leg and land in a scale. So that's just a leap drill. Some ankle jumps, stride leaps on the low beam. I like stride leaps before I always teach a stride leap on beam and floor before I teach a split leap, just because when they get to the point where they need to learn a switch leap, if they've been doing a stag entry leap, it's very hard to get that swing leg nice and straight. So I like stride leaps for that reason, but you've got to do what's right for your program. Split jumps on the floor, adding in a straight jump, so connected to it. I like straight jump then split jump, but it is reversible. If you're doing straight jump, split jump, you can do it in either way. Tuck jumps I like just because of the emphasis on wolf jumping at level 5 and 6. So I like putting in some tuck jumps so they're learning to close their body up. And then I create lots of complexes so that I can keep it all busy and moving in the right direction. Cartwheels need to be introduced, and then some walkovers, but only probably on the line in the early part of the year. Then I like it onto the low beam with spot later in the year. The level 4s can also do in preparation for the mount. I don't know if all of you are aware, but the level 5 beam mount is a swing to front support, which kids have trouble with. So I set up 2 boxes either side with a little channel in the middle, and I just get them to do some swings, almost like P-bar swings, to be honest. And they just swing their legs up to a straddle on the boxes. I find that helps them a lot understand and have the control and strength to do that. So those are the progressions that I would build in for level 4. Some of those would be very much late term 3 and term 4, and some of them would be term 2. So you've just got to build into your program as you see fit. When I created unit program for a 10-week term, like we just went through, I always make sure I've got some extras down the side, because there's always going to be kids who are picking things up quickly or able to cope quickly, and you'll need to give them some extras to keep them challenged. So I make sure I've got a set of progressions that I will be moving towards. Thank you, Sarah.
Just the one question, yeah, that's come up from Alexia. Are these
Yeah.
progressions more for the end of the year prior to the girls changing levels?
Yes, Alexia, it is. So there's a few things in there that I'd probably do in term 2. At level 4, the caterpillars with the hip flex definitely in term 2. Step, kick, snap on its own before a half turn can probably go in term 2. The dip to single leg releve can go in term 2. Obviously, the walkovers are not going to go in immediately. They need to be much further down the track at level 4 and making sure that they're competent on the floor before they ever go near a beam. Tuck jumps probably midway through term 2. So that's just a table of things where you can work out at where they're going to fit. And to be honest, that table is going to depend largely on the progression of your athletes from what you did with them in term 1. So if the term 1 program was all basics and their basics are now really good and you can start moving forward but not quickly, then you do that. If they came to you with quite good basics, you could probably move through some of these things a little bit earlier. Does that answer your question, Alexia? Sorry. I'm hoping it does. No worries. Okay, Sarah, let's change the page. Floor, good news about floor, there's usually lots of space if you've got a full floor. If you've only got a couple of rows allocated to you, or you've only got a couple of rows in the gym, you need to make sure you're using all the space available is my first piece of advice. So we've got level 3 floor, term 1, week 1 to 3. So they're only usually very inexperienced athletes at this point, having just come from level 2. So my complex is always walking, kicking, passe, turn development, always on floor. So walking on releve, they're going to have no issue with that. They've been doing it on beam, so on floor it shouldn't be an issue. And some passe, hold and rises, just making sure the arms are correct. But if you've reinforced arms on beam, the same would be for floor. I don't do different arms on beam, floor, or different floor for beam. I keep my technique very simple. These kids, they're young usually, and they're quite inexperienced with the level of training that they've been doing, the amount of gymnastics that they've been doing. So I just keep all the positions the same. Kicking forwards and backwards, and kick and hold as well. So you can do this in rows where they step, kick, hold, or you can do it with one hand on a box and set up some boxes around the floor. It's completely up to you. Then with the leaping and jumping, I do some ankle jumps. Sometimes these are in everyone's warm-up. So if you don't want to repeat them again in your floor program, then that might be something for you to consider. I like ankle jumps as they come to floor just for a warm-up perspective in terms of legs and using the floor. Straight jumps times 2, split jumps and lead up drills for each leg. So that just reinforces your beam program at level 3. Split jumps are usually tricky. Level 3s find split jumps tricky, mostly because they only like to do the split on one leg. They lift up the front leg and they forget about the back leg, or they'll lift up the back leg and forget about the front leg. So having them understand legs move together and go out and together to come in is usually a difficult concept. So I usually stand them on a little sticky dot and we do lots of split jumping, but I make sure all my positions are correct. I don't compromise. This is the start position, this is the land position. I set it all up technically how I like it, and then we do a lot of split jumps on the sticky dot. Body contraction, which is in the level 3 routine. Kids struggle with this. They're little kids, their coordination's not fabulous. So I usually do the body contraction only with arms first. I used to teach the whole thing and then drive myself crazy because they couldn't make their arms work with what their body was doing. So now I teach arms first, and it's always worked for me. Once they understand where their arms need to go, then they'll understand how to move their body. But if you try and teach the body part of the contraction with the arms, sometimes they get a little mixed up. The acro, forward rolls, handstand levers to step in, because remember they're in level 3, and at level 4 they're going to need to do a handstand to step in on the beam. So that needs to be in the level 3 floor program. Split handstand to step in. Split handstand different to an L handstand. L handstand, one leg vertical, one leg to the side, like a 90-degree leg angle. Split handstand is both legs on top. So not going to have a great amount of split, but I like the split handstand because it forces control on top of their hands and shoulders. Their weight is right up on top of them. We've all seen the level 3 kids on beam at a competition. They do their L handstand, and the judges amongst us here will know this. Their bottom foot comes off the beam just 1 centimetre and then goes back on. And that's their L handstand. And they just do a big giant split so that they can get their top leg to vertical, but their bottom leg doesn't actually come very far off the beam or off the floor. Well, a split handstand is going to change that. It forces their weight up on top of them, and it helps them be able to control their handstand. Cartwheel to lunge and step in, and just making sure at that point, very early parts of level 3, start position's correct, hand placement's how you want it, the finish positions are how you want it. And a bridge to hold and some tuck rocks. I always do tuck rocks following a bridge, but bridge as in the picture that's there, just lying flat on the floor with a tight body and then pushing up to a bridge. So in that position, you would want legs straight, feet flat, head in the right position, fingers pointing at feet, just making sure all the positioning is correct. They don't need to hold it a long time. They only need to hold it 3 or 4 seconds and then come down and do some tuck rocks. And then some backward rolls in squat. You may need to start with a wedge or a little hill or some soft mats, but they generally should be able to do a backward roll having come from level 2. So just again, in the early parts of level 3, look for the technique. And is the hands how you want it? Is the start position how you want it? Are legs together? Is it stopping in the middle and stalling? Is it rolling well? Technical things need to be reinforced at this part of the term. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, then moving from weeks 4 to 6. So our complex, we should be able to get through the kicking a little bit faster. Form should be starting to improve. Turn positions with passe half turn to stop in tall releve on 2 feet. So that's the first half of the turn that they need to do in their floor routine. So they have their start position as per your technique or as per what they'll need to be doing in their routine. They do a half turn on 1 foot, and then they put that foot down after they've done a half, that free leg down, and they stand tall in a nice tall position with arms above their head. And then some kicking and holding, adding in some side positioning, because we haven't got that in term 1 of the beam program for level 3. So we need to start doing that on the floor now, so we can put that into our program in term 2. Straight jumps on floor, you can do them in rows, you can do them in sets, you can do more than 2, less than 2, just making sure you're checking your techniques are correct. Split jumps on floor and tramp. Tramp's really good for split jumps, gives them a little bit more air time to work out where their legs go. I would definitely focus on this point when on a trampoline on the arm positioning and the posture, as opposed to the split in the early days. I would focus on everything, all the techniques being correct. Remember, with a little bit of extra height comes a little bit of less control for some level 3s, particularly if they're young. So you'll need to make sure that they're able to, if you're asking them to do 10 split jumps in a row, they might have very poor control. So just lower that number, bring it down to, okay, let's start with 2 in a row. Oh, yours is good. Let's start with 4 in a row and moving up from there. Stride leaps. Times 2, start small in terms of split. You can put some sticky dots on the floor or hoops or bean bags or lines on the floor, or draw some smiley faces on the floor or in chalk, or whatever you need to do. But stride leap meaning straight leg entry, not stag entry. And then the body contraction, you should be able to add in a little bit of movement, even if you just add in the arch part and keep going with the arm swing. Don't worry about the round part, or if you add the round part and not the arch part. But if you've been doing arms for 3 weeks, generally they'll be able to manage the body part at this point. Forward rolls for acro, definitely grabbing the legs, head tucked under. These should be rotating quite well and be quite smooth in their transition. L handstand step in. So you've been doing a lot of levers previously, so the L handstand step in should now be something that they can grasp. Split handstand step in. The split's not going to be fabulous, but we're not doing it for the fabulous split. We're doing it for the control part of the element. Certainly we add in split, because obviously walkovers at level 5 and 6 and beyond, there's a split deduction if you're not split. So starting with some split handstands at lower levels tends to pay off when they're doing it through walkovers and TikToks. Handstand step in, and cartwheels times 2 on a line. So that's 2 in a row. So to start with, I don't actually do the step in, I just do cartwheel finish on the side. So that just understanding that transition area between cartwheels, and then I add the quarter turn with the step in on the second cartwheel, probably later in the term. Just understanding the transition between cartwheels is something they need to grasp first. And again, make sure the technique's right. Doing it on a line is really good because it gives them a visual aid. They can see if they're going offline or if they're going around the side or got an archy body. You'll be able to do it on a line and they'll be able to see. Bridge hold to kick over. So this can be a bridge hold. If they can't kick over, you can get them to do some kickovers off a box, or you can assist them to kick over. I would suggest if they can't kick over, there's usually a tight shoulders, tight hips or something going on in the bridge. So you might need to address that with your conditioning, but generally if they can't kick over themselves, start with a box and then just go lower and lower each time until they're able to do it. Backward rolls in squat, they should be able to, weeks 4 to 6, they should be able to put 2 in a row. If they're still not quite grasping that, just stay with the wedge so that for safety reasons, get them to keep rolling down the wedge. Thank you, Sarah. Floor, last part of the term for level 3, walking and kicking complex, I would make up myself. So that would be similar to being 2 kicks forward or 4 kicks forward, 4 kicks to the side, 4 kicks back, whatever you need to do. It can have some releves, it can have some kick to step in, it can have kick to point, it can have kick and hold, whatever you want to put into your complex. And the turns at this point, at the latter part of term 1, they should be able to do that half turn that's in level 3. You've been doing passe half turn on 1 foot to stop in releve, so adding that extra half turn on 2 feet shouldn't be an issue. Leaps and jumps, straight jumps, chasses. Chasses usually very interesting when you teach them to a level 3 child, but understanding that the touching of the feet in the middle on the chasses is usually tricky for them. So I usually just start with their hands on their hips and get them to understand the leg part of the chasse first before I add in arms or opposite arms or anything else. Tuck jumps should be reasonably okay for them to understand, even if you've got them on the trampoline. Understanding that they have to tuck and their knees have to come to their chest. Split jumps up onto a low box. So low box meaning 5 centimeters high, 10 centimeters high, not higher than that, standing next to the box on the floor with the correct arms and all the correct positioning that you've been reinforcing for 6 weeks. And then they do swing their arms and land up onto the 5 centimeter box. So they travel slightly sideways. So we get them to stand right next to the box and do a split jump. The purpose of the box is their legs have to move fast. So 7 weeks, if you've been doing 6 weeks of split jumps on the floor to increase split or increase the speed of the legs moving, if you add something higher for them to land on, the legs have to go out and in faster or they won't be able to get up onto the height that we've got there for them. And some Sazone positioning in terms on the low box. So that would just be very early Sazone, no split involved, just standing with 2 feet, understanding the opposite arms. I teach Sazone opposite arms. Some people teach arms out to the side, so whatever works for you, and just up onto a low box as in 5 to 10 centimeters high, not higher than that. And just a 2 foot push to a 1 foot landing. I find that's a tricky concept for them, so I start very early with that one. Cartwheel times 2 step in, handstand forward roll onto a low soft mat. Remember, you've been doing lots of work on kick to handstand, split handstand, L handstand. So handstand forward roll shouldn't be an issue. Even if you put down a fluffy mat or a little mattress and they do the handstand with their hands on the floor and they roll down onto the mattress, or you assist them to roll, that can always be really helpful. Cartwheel step in to fall onto the wedge. So that's a standing. So with their foot in front of them, no hurdle. Cartwheel to step in, and then they just fall onto a crash mat onto their back or back onto a wedge that's behind them. That's just early round off work. And cartwheel on the line, fall onto the stomach on the crash mat. So that was with a crash mat, 30 centimeters, soft crash mat. Hands go on the line in the cartwheel, feet join, and then they fall onto their stomach. And you can see if they're in a nice straight line, that's just early round off work as well. Then walk over and tick-tock drills. Tick-tock you can do on a box with their foot up on a 25 centimeter box, so they're understanding the weight transfer. Walkover, I would not be spotting any walkovers unless a child couldn't do a bridge kick over on their own first. If they can, you can start working through the process of the walkovers. but I certainly wouldn't be doing any heavy lifting if they cannot kick over from a bridge. Hurdle drills in terms of arms and 2-foot takeoff, not hurdling with a run at this point, and backward roller front support down the wedge. So they should have mastered by this point some backward rolls in a tuck position. So doing some early work in a front support downhill will definitely be able to start here in kind of weeks 8 to 10 of level 3. Okay, let's move on to level 4. Level 4, all of the same kinds of things that we were doing on beam and in level 3 floor, all of the walking and the kicking and the holding, all the same. You can put it into little complexes of your own, or you can leave it in rows, depending on the kids that you've got in your care. Remembering term 1, week 1, or term 1, weeks 1 to 3, still level 3 athletes a little bit at this point. So you might have to reinforce some basics. Some straight jumps. We all love the straight jumps. They can do those in rows or in multiple sets, even on the trampoline. They're having problem jumping and having control. Trampoline can actually assist you. Split jumps on floor and tramp. For level 4s, they should have done some of this at level 3, so it shouldn't be a big issue. And some stride leaps, that is straight leg entry. You can put them in rows, hoops, sticky dots, draw a smiley face on the floor, and some tuck jumps, just so that they're learning to close their body up. Passe half turn to releve hold. So that's the same as in level 3, where they do a half turn on 1 foot and stop and hold with 2 feet on the floor. And then their acros, forward rolls, backward tuck rolls in series, so forward tuck rolls in series, split handstand, so not L handstand, different. And they should be able to have a little bit more tall posture through their handstand at this point and gaining a little bit of flexibility. Some cartwheel step in to fall backwards, so that's early round off, and cartwheel fall to chest, so that's the same as week 7 to 10 of level 3. And so just some slow handstand flat backs, no hurdling, no boards, just handstand, hands on the floor, fall to a soft mat on their back. That's just early handspring work. So understanding that the handstand needs to be controlled and tight and straight, and being able to maintain that as they fall. Walkovers and TikToks, they should have done a reasonable amount of walkovers and TikTok development towards the end of level 3. But again, children who can't bridge kickover, I would not spot for walkovers. I think it's not good for them. It's not good for you as a spotter. But obviously, if they can't kick over from a bridge on the floor, there's some shoulder or hip issues that need to be addressed. TikToks, as you get good at 20 centimeters, you can bring the height of the box down so that they're eventually doing it off the floor. Hurdle drills, standing starts with static drills and shaping. So that's standing with a tight body, swing their arms, bend their legs, stop in the hurdle shape, or hurdle and do a cartwheel, or hurdle and do a run, or just walking along the mat, doing hurdle arm swings. That's what we're talking about there in preparation for all the hurdling that they need to do for their handspring and their round off. Thank you, Sarah. Level 4, so just moving along, all the kicking and holding still in your complex area, all of the jumping and leaping that you've been doing. So you can step up the numbers at this point. You can probably, as opposed to doing 5 of those, you can change it now to 8 and then build up your numbers. On tramp, I like split jumps and straddle jumps. There is some straddle jumping that they're able to do at level 5 and 6, or maybe just level 6. So introducing that straddle jump positioning at a lower level on trampoline can be quite beneficial. And then, of course, keeping going with all of your turns. The leaping they should be able to do in a row at this point. The leaping, it says stride leaps times 3 there, but you probably do that in a row. Just again, make sure they're not compromising posture. Make sure that they've got all the arm positions and things that you've taught them to this point. And then we can pick up the hurdle drills as well. Hurdle to cartwheel, step in, fall. So that's the same as the drill that I explained in level 3, but with a standing hurdle start. Hurdle cartwheel, step in, run backwards. Round offs on the trampoline, hurdle to handstand flat back. So as opposed to standing handstand back, flat back, they can now do a standing hurdle, handstand flat back. Just make sure they're landing on something soft. And backward rolls downhill to front support, or they can do downhill front support to land in a front support position with their feet raised. That will help as well. And then some work with their walkovers and TikToks. So I would be doing TikToks before forward walkovers. I think there needs to be a good amount of weight transfer understanding with TikTok before I do forward walkover. But at this point, the back walkovers should be they should be able to be spot to do those. Or if they're going to go down the TikTok path, they should be getting a little bit more control, a little bit more understanding of the weight transfer from one foot back over their head. Thank you, Sarah. And the last part of term, more of the same, except we're going to add in a few more numbers here. We're actually going to put some sets on the tramp with our jumps and leaps, a split jump left and right, not just dominant leg. You need to do some work on the other leg as well. Just make sure they've got control over what they're doing. If you've got them doing 15 split jumps in a row and they're jumping all over the trampoline and they're not able to control their body, bring that number down. And straddle jumps in sets as well. Making sure that they're understanding where you want their arms, whether their arms are out to the side or in front or wherever you see fit for their arms, just making sure all of those posture and arm techniques are correct. Some jump half turns as they move towards level 6. There's a jump half turn set or some jumps that are requiring them to have a degree of turn. So some jump half turns and some chasses. Again, start with hands on hips, then work your way up and put in the arm techniques as you see fit. And then with their acro, some hurdle to round off. They should be able to go onto a soft mat, a 10 centimetre soft mat or a mattress. They should have a good understanding of a hurdle from standing at this point. I always teach a hurdle from standing before I teach them a run, just so that they're understanding the shaping and they're understanding the technical side of it. Kick to fast handstand against the wall, that's a handspring drill. So that's with their hands about 20 centimetres out from the crash mat that's standing on the wall or the wedge against the wall, and they just kick to a nice tight fast handstand, which lands in like a tight reverse dish shape. And then they can do some on the trampoline as well. They can do some hurdle to handspring on the tramp. Downhill, if you've got a double mini tramp or a tumble tramp, you might need to spot at this point, or if they can do downhill from the tramp for 30 centimetres and you step in and spot, or if you like the mat's level, completely up to you. Walkovers and TikToks the same, and backward roll to front support downhill to land uphill. So that's standing on a box in front of a wedge, roll with straight legs backwards down the wedge, and feet land up on a box with a soft mat on top of it. So landing in a front support with their feet elevated. That's what that one means. All good. Okay, so that's our 10 weeks, level 3 and 4. Thank you, Sarah. Let's move to the next slide. So the progression, same as level 3. We need to make sure that you move slowly. We need to make sure that what you're doing is the technique that you want completed. Always remember that floor plays a big part of beam. So if you're developing a technique on floor, you're actually working with that technique the same on beam. A lot of floor dance and acro skills assist the beam progressions that you've got in place. So if you're teaching, for example, a straight jump arms or positioning on floor, transfer that to beam also. So if you let it go astray on floor, it's going to go astray on beam also. So be mindful that floor also takes on a lot of beam development. Be careful with techniques at level 3 and 4 acro skills, particularly level 4 handsprings, round-offs. These are going to be very important skills when you want to transition to tumble connections at higher levels. And if you have a weakness at this point, that weakness will carry through the rest of your program. And use all of the space you have. The best news about floor is usually you've got a bit more space to set up some side stations or some circuits. Use the equipment that you have. Don't have a full floor and have your squad just using one row up and down. Spread out, set up your drills, set up your circuits, and use the space that you have. Thank you, Sarah. Here are the progressions. I'm not going to go through all of them. It's the same table as of progressions similar to beam, but for floor skills and floor development. This is a level 3 progression, so I would add these in spread out over terms 2 to 4. Some of this is very much term 4. Some of this can be implemented at term 2. I'd probably at this point at level 3, as moving throughout the year, I'd step up the complex part of level 3 beam and level 3 floor. I'd be tailoring it so it's quite efficient. and doesn't take up too much time, so that you can get onto some of the more difficult skill sets around beam and floor. Thank you, Sarah. This is the level 4 progressions that I would work into the program. When I say round off drills, hurdle drills, handspring drills, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. We don't have time to go through every single one, but these are the things that I would start doing, and I would build into terms 2 to 4. So it doesn't need to be only one round off drill. Go and research what's important to you in your program and put 2 or 3 in the session that work for you. Work with the space that you have, work with the squad that you've got, work with, I don't have access to the crash mat when I'm at floor, so I can't do that drill, so I'll have to do this drill. There's a lot of drills out there for round offs and handsprings. There's a lot of drills out there for flips. The Clue and Turn and YouTube channel is very good with technical things, so I would totally advise everybody having a look at that. Other than that, if you're working with a mentor or you've got a coach in your gym that can give you some alternatives, speak to them, steal other people's drills, I say. That's the best way to learn, making sure that you can get a good grasp on what you need to have your group doing. So zone drills early prep just means up onto a low box, as I mentioned before. Jump half turn, straight jump half turn is in there because there is a set in level 6 where they do a half turn, a split jump or a straddle jump, I believe, and a half turn. And then some handstand variations and some work with walkovers and TikToks. So perfect. All right. Does anyone have any questions? I think there was a few in the chat there, Sarah.
The one that came up from Natalie was, what were the drill website that you suggested?
Clue and Turn.
Yeah, I think Sherry's just put it in the chat then. Thank you, Sherry. Clue and Turn.
Yeah, that's it. And they've got it's not, they're not high performance kids. They're not kids that are training, that look to me that they're obviously training a lot of hours, but some of their basic drills and skills are really very helpful for level 3 to 6. They do a lot of core drills. There's a lot of flexibility drills in there. There's some work with handsprings in different setups, not in big gyms or anything. They've got a few different ideas in there that you can have a bit of a look at. I find their channel quite interesting. Yes, it's a YouTube channel. Sorry, did I say that? I probably didn't say that. Yes, it is YouTube. It is very, very good. I've done a lot of looking at that. All right, Sarah, let's move on.
Yeah.
Linda, I've got a question.
Sure.
Joe Thompson.
Hi, Joe.
How are you?
Yes.
Charles, my question is just with tramp rotations. Do you do it like a separate rotation for tramp, or do you mostly get your tramp stuff covered within your floor time?
we get most of our floor stuff covered, our tramp stuff covered in floor. Yes, we've got 2 different areas for floor. We've got a full floor, and then upstairs we've got a tumble strip into a pit, and the other end is like a double mini tramp.
Yep.
Or a short tumble tramp into a pit. But we've also got a little tramp downstairs that's next to floor but part of bars that we use. It's just like a little tiny trampoline, and we do a lot of jumping on that as well. Because it's right next to the floor. So generally I have to do tramp in my floor rotation, but if in my floor rotation for that day or that term is short, I know that I'll get a tramp rotation or an upstairs tumble tramp rotation. Sorry, does that make sense?
Yep.
All good, but I always use tramp. Most of the coaches at Sydney Academy use tramp as part of their jumping, leaping, all of the early technique stuff. We do a lot of that on tramp. Yes, we do. So it's really good. It's actually really good, really helpful, especially for level 3 and 4.
Yep. Thank you.
No worries. All right, Sarah, let's move to the next.
Sorry, Linda, can I ask a question as well?
Sure. Yeah.
At what point would you introduce back handspring drills? Would this be purely level 4, or could you start towards the end of level 3 as well, just with drills?
It would depend on the athlete that I have if they were in level 3.
If they were quite confident, say with back walkovers?
Yeah, I would do the early shaping, and I would make sure all the technical stuff is covered first before they attempted to do a flip. So I
Yeah.
would do all of the shaping of the handstand position. I do all of the sit back work on the takeoff. I do all the snap down drills. I probably wouldn't turn the flip over. I'd make sure my techniques and my drills are up to scratch so that at level 4, they can actually start turning that over, or late level 3 if they're competent. You know, sometimes we get kids from other programs or other gym sports and they've learned to flip already. So, you know, and kids that can move a bit faster, they're ready for that. So if they're ready for that, introduce it. Absolutely. You've just got to keep the rest of the group busy. That's the issue, I think.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, team. Does anyone else have a question?
That was all good. It was just all a question about previous recordings, but I've popped in the chat, so all good, Linda.
Okay, perfect. So physical preparation, I've done a little bit differently today. I've done exactly what I would do if I had a level 3 squad and a level 4 squad. I haven't given you a big range of things because I think if we're going to do some sessions later down the track, we can probably cover some conditioning for certain levels. So these are the things that I would do for level 3 and 4. Again, where do we start? Who have we got in a squad? How old are they? What space do I have? Do I have some equipment? Do I have access to that box over there? Do I have some bands that I can use? What have I got? So that's the first question. Then work with what you have. You know, not every child is going to be flexible. Not every child is going to have strong legs. You've got to work with what you've got, and you've got to build your program to suit all 10 kids standing in front of you. You can't write a program just for the weakest kid. You can't write a program just for the strongest kid. You have to write a program that's challenging for all of them. You also need to write a program that you can control. And I've worked with a lot of coaches, and I've worked with coaches who have 25 things in their conditioning program, and I've worked with coaches who have between 4 and 8 items with their conditioning and their physical preparation and flexibility. And all I can say is you have to keep control over all of it. If 25 stations works for you, more power to you. I'm old and I can't watch them do all of that. So I like setting up my specific things that I know work, and then I go with that and make sure I can control that. So don't overcomplicate things. Don't overcomplicate things. Yes, you can add in some prehab things and some rehab things that work for you and support your prep programs. But remember, some of these things can be in warm-ups and warm-downs as well. So keep your conditioning for your conditioning, keep your flexibility in your flexibility. Some clubs I've worked in have a flexibility rotation, which is amazing if you can get it. They have a conditioning rotation and a flexibility rotation. Some people have flexibility rotations that are part of their dance program, and they have a dance teacher come in and they do it. That would be wonderful too. But if you don't have access to all of that, there are definitely some options for you. Thank you, Sarah. Moving to the next page, which is lower body. So these 10 things are literally all that I would do at level 3 and 4. And I know they're all legs. I know you wouldn't be doing 10 legs things each session, but I would pick those 2 for that 3 weeks. Then every 3 weeks I change my program, because every 3 weeks their muscle memory kicks in and they start to get used to it and they stop getting strong anymore. So you've got to keep it a little bit varied. You've got to keep it a little bit mixed up. The amount of leg conditioning that they need is quite important for level 3 to 10, or quite important for gymnastics. Think about the apparatus. Vault, it's legs. It's got to be fast, it's got to be dynamic, it's got to be powerful. So it's legs that are doing the work. Beam, acro series, leap series at high level, legs, leg work. Floor, tumbling, that's got to be powerful. Leaping, that's got to be nice and high and lifted and split. So legs and flexibility are actually a big part of all of this. So these are the things that I would do, and everybody's going to get a copy of the PowerPoint, so I can see a few people madly writing things down. You're going to get a copy of it, so don't stress. Ankle bounces in rows or on the spot. Ankle bounces I love because kids aren't able to distinguish jumping with bent legs and using their butt, their quads, with just you isolating their feet. And quite often kids have got very strong quads, very strong in the hips, very strong in the butt area, but their ankles are not strong enough. These are the kids that continually roll their ankle. These are the kids that usually are doing another sport that's not great for ankles, tennis, netball, things like that. So I love ankle bounces because it isolates just their ankle, and I use it as a body tension drill as well. If they're doing this properly, they won't bounce very high. If they're doing this properly, they have to have control over their core. They have to have control over their body tension through their butt. So just little ankle bounces. And also if they're not doing it properly, I can see, because if their feet aren't pointing when they leave the floor, they're not using their ankles properly. Their feet should point down to the floor as they leave the floor. And that's a big issue when they're learning to tumble and they're learning to vault and leap and jump, is that they're not got strong ankles. They've got strong legs, but not strong ankles. Plyo jumps over the foam. We all do these. These are like, we set them up in our circuits and we put different heights of boxes. We put foam at lower levels. I use lower surfaces, so level 3 and 4, just the foam, just like a cube of foam, or you can put hoops, or you can put dots, or you can put whatever you like on the floor, bean bags. They're a quickness drill as much as they are a leg conditioning drill. They force them to move quickly, and do that sideways as well in a lateral position, making sure that they're doing sideways, not just forward and backward. Box jumps, if they're level 3, I'd have the box at about 40, 50 centimeters. They're level 4, 60 centimeters. Sets of 15, not 1, 2, I need to get a drink, Linda, and I'll come back and I'll do the other 13, and then they do 3 more, and then they've all got to be done in a row. So when I say a set, it's in a row. I usually count them, or I give them a partner and the partner counts them. They have to do 15 in a row, depending on the level, depending on the age of the child, depending on the size of the child, as to how many sets we would do. Candle, roll and jump. This is standing, arms above their head. Squat, roll onto their back, make a nice tight candle shape, and stand up and jump, holding the foam above their head so they can't use their arms. So they hold a block of foam above their head, like in a straight body position. They roll back, they stand up and they jump. You can put a little 20 centimeter box for them to jump onto if you like. I do those in sets of 8. You can also do these with really little level 3s and take out the jump. Just the candle rolled stand is leg conditioning. Making sure the candle's being performed correctly is a big thing with that one. And I usually do that in sets of 8. So if I had a level 3 squad, we might do 2 sets of 8. Candle, roll and jump. For level 4, 3 sets or 4 sets, however many you think are necessary. Hamstring slides. So that's with a slider or a piece of paper that's laminated, an A4 piece of paper that's laminated, and lie on their back with the slider under their heels. Lift their hips up off the floor, but their legs are straight. So they're like in an open dish position. And then with their bottoms staying off the floor, sliding their heels into their bottom and back. That's going to strengthen their hamstring, which quite often gets overlooked. We stretch hamstrings, we're not always very good at strengthening hamstrings. Calf raises, we've all seen those, rises on flat surfaces, on raised surfaces, on soft surfaces, just depending on the level of the child that you've got, how many you do in a row, or whether you do single leg or double leg. Broad jumps, so they're probably already in your warm-up as well, where they stand and they do a big jump forward. You can put targets on the floor, you can put a sticky dot 1.5 meters from the next sticky dot, and they've got to make it to each dot. I'd be careful with hoops because they generally make a big mess of the hoops and they get their foot stuck and the hoops go flying over the gym. So be careful with hoops. Sticky dots work better, or a little chalk dot on the floor. Sit and jump. So that's where they sit. They're standing. They sit on a 30 centimeter box, or if you would like them to sit lower, 25 centimeter box. Sit on a 30 centimeter box, and then they jump up in front of them, or they do stand. So little level 3s sit on a 30 centimeter box and stand. They can do that on one leg. So they can hold one leg out like a single leg squat, but not right down into the squat because they tend to lack control and can hurt their knees when they're young. So sit and stand, or sit and jump. So probably as they get stronger, they can sit on a box and immediately jump onto a 60 centimeter box. You can have this with them holding a beanbag. They can hold a piece of foam, whatever you get them to do. Crash mat jumps, super soft, right? It's like jogging on sand, really soft, good for the legs, strengthening the butt, hamstrings. And then you can create your own circuit. So you can do 1 day a week. You do 2 arms things, or 4 arms things, 3 mid-body things, and we're going to do a leg circuit. And in the leg circuit, it's just like set up in different stations, and they move around the stations. And you can set that up age appropriate, level appropriate. Very, very easy to do. You just need to have the space and available boxes and things that you need to do. So that, I wouldn't do all 10 of those, obviously, in a session. I usually pick 2 or 3, and I change the program every 3 weeks. So in weeks 1 to 3 of term 1, I might pick the ankle bounces, the candle roll and jump, and the calf raises. So I would do those things in week 1, 2, and 3. Then at week 4, I switch and I say, okay, well, today we're going to do some plyo jumps. Today we're going to do some crash mat jumps. And today we're going to do the hamstring slides. And I put them in the next 3 weeks. And then the last 3, I use 3 more. The last 3 weeks of the term, I'd use 3 more. And then in term 2, I up the numbers and I up the sets. I also build in any kind of prehab or rehab. You can do some work with elastics. Kids who are injured can't do a lot of leg conditioning. They've got a sore foot or severs or whatever they've got going on. You can give them different things to do so that they're not hurting themselves. So I hope all of that makes sense. That's literally all that I would do for that level of athlete. I would just vary the sets and I would vary the reps that you're doing as well. I find most of those are easy to manage as well. Very easy for me to keep control of. They're not over the other side of the gym doing silly things. I can see where they are. Mostly you don't need a lot of equipment for all of that. So it's generally something you can do right in front of you. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone do anything else differently? No? Okay, moving on with progressions, exactly what I just said. Change your program every 3 weeks. As they start to get into, if you've got chin-ups in your program every week and you only got 5 chin-ups in your program every week, then they're not going to get stronger because they're going to become adapted to those 5 chin-ups. You've got to continually think about the sets that they're doing. You've got to continually think about the numbers that they're doing. They should be challenged, but it shouldn't be unachievable for them because they're just going to feel bad about themselves if it's not something they can achieve. So set your numbers and your reps according to the kids that you've got in front of you. Research what the activity that you're doing and go with what works for you. Just what works for me might not work for you. You might not have the same amount of space. I might have a different age group of kids. Research what you need to do and we'll do what works for you. You can add in some prehab and rehab stations. Like you've got 3 leg conditioning stations or you've set up a leg circuit with 10 things in it, but they're still lining up for too long. They're still standing too long. While they're waiting, they have to do this prehab exercise or this rehab exercise. Hop and stop is a good one. You get them to stand on one leg and make a square with their hops. So they hop forward on the square and stop, hop sideways and stop, hop backwards and stop, hop sideways and stop. So they're making a square on the floor, but they're waiting on their line and they're doing it. And that's a slow activity. That's a controlled activity. It's not a fast kind of plyo movement. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about leg conditioning? Nothing in the chat, Sarah?
Nothing in the chat, Linda.
Sweet.
Looks like you're doing a great job.
Sweet, thanks, Sarah. Okay, let's move on to the flexibility. Okay, flexibility, very, very important. 2 reasons. Bigger range of movement, allowing them to do more difficult skills, plus really key in injury prevention. So if you've got a really tight athlete, an athlete that's not flexible, you will eventually run into injury issues. So flexibility is very important. Flexibility is generally in the warm-ups and the warm-downs. The primary function of the warm-up is that you're preparing the body for physical activity. So it includes a range of things, including flexibility. Warm-downs are primarily for body or muscle recovery. So, but this is also the time that we gain flexibility during the warm-down. So unfortunately, warm downs at the end of the session, right? They're within the last 5 minutes and the parents are already standing over there and that coach wants to speak to you and you haven't marked the roll and she came in late. And we tend by nature not to put a lot of work into warm downs, but warm downs are where your kids are going to gain the greatest amount of flexibility. So they need to be structured and you need to place as much importance on a warm down as you do a warm up. Okay, let's switch page. Thank you, Sarah. These are the stretches that I would do at level 3 and 4. These are in addition to your general warm-up. So this is not the only stretching that you would do. You would definitely warm up your shoulders, warm up your wrist, all of those things. These are the flexibility stretches that are specific to the range of skills that they need to do, but not the only stretches. So straddle stretch, 30 seconds, that's a pancake stretch. Pike stretch your feet together, 30 seconds I would do of that. Hips is a big problem. Kids with hips that are tight and shoulders that are tight. If your shoulders are tight, your back does the work. If your hips are tight, your back does the work. If they're both tight, your poor old back is being overloaded. So you need to make sure that hips and shoulders are a big part of your flexibility program. So hips, lunging on a line, there's all kinds of hip stretches that you can do. You can do your back leg up on a box. You can do splits with the back knee bent, with the foot up against a box. You can do back leg up over splits. You can do all of these things, but appropriately for level 3 and 4, I would do the lunging hip stretch on a line. I wouldn't be doing any pushing. I wouldn't be doing any kind of adding weights of any sort, ever. These are the stretches, the only stretches that I would do with a level 3 and 4 athlete. Hips on a line is where the line is so that they can see themselves as a visual aid if they're off direction. Back foot on the line, so they move their front foot out in front of them and they push their hips down to the floor like a lunge position. And they would hold that position for 30 seconds. I don't let them lean forward because leaning forward takes pressure off that back hip that you're going to try and stretch. I would have their hands up on their head or their hands on their shoulder or their body sitting up very straight and their arms down by their side just to make sure they're getting that stretch on that back hip. Then I would change legs. Hamstrings in the pike stretch, yes. People say to me, oh, you did hamstrings, it's the pike stretch. I like a standing pike stretch. I think it actually gives the hamstring a little bit more of a robust stretch. So standing with feet together, not one foot in front of the other, and hands down on the floor, making sure that their hips stay in line with their heels, making sure that their back is as flat as possible. Most of them will just kind of hunch over and throw themselves down. You want them to make sure that as they go down, they're keeping their back as flat as possible. And then splits on a line. I do it on the line because they can see as a visual aid straight away if they're not twisted. If they are twisted, sorry, they can make sure that their foot's on the line at the back, their knees on the line at the back, their foot is turned under at the back, their hips are facing the front. And also with the front leg on the line, they can see almost immediately that their knee is not rolling in. They can see that their foot's pointed. And I would make sure again that they're sitting up straight, no leaning forward, taking pressure off that back hip, sitting up nice and straight with their hands on their head or their hands next to them on the floor, but not torso forward. Side splits again on the line so they can see almost immediately if there's something not quite right. Their bottom and their feet have to be over the line as well. Legs need to be straight, no elbows underneath them, hands out to the side or above their head so that they're actually feeling that stretch.
So Linda, sorry, do you have, when they do the side split, do you have, they're on their tummy, so their elbows are on the floor?
So they're on their tummy.
Do you do sitting up ones as well?
I don't usually do it at level 3 and 4 just because they don't have that control over their form and they're, as I like to say, classic wrigglers. They wriggle around and they talk to their friend next to them and when they move their body over there to talk to her about something, their whole body moves. So I just put in one stretch at this point. Maybe later in the term, as they have gained a bit of flexibility, I would do a sitting up straddle stretch as well against boxes or the edge of the running mat or wherever you can find, definitely. But I find that this is a more intense stretch. And then once that stretch is done, there's not anything else for them to wriggle around on.
Cool. Tap.
So bridge, 30 seconds. As we said before, feet and knees together, feet flat, 5 tuck rocks after you've done it. Can do on a raised surface. The raised surface takes pressure off the lower back and gives a little bit more intensity in the shoulder area. So that's a good one to do as well. Feet, calf stretch with their ball of their foot on a box or something and their heel pushing down with a straight leg for calf and a bent knee to go down into their Achilles. Just be careful with kids with severs. They might not be able to do those stretches. And I would definitely do both legs. The only issue I would check with the Achilles stretch, make sure when they do their Achilles stretch with their knee bent, that their knee is not bent over their big toe, their knee is bent over their second toe, because we don't want their knee to roll in. And then the shoulder stretch is a shoulder stretch just for shoulders. So that's with elbows on the beam or on a box, I wouldn't do any pushing with a lower level athlete, absolutely not. I'd let their body weight do it properly. Certainly they need to adjust the position and you need to put them in the position you need them in, but hands on a box, I like elbows on a box. I find with hands on a box or hands on a beam, they bend their arms to lessen the stretch in their shoulders. I find that if their arms are crossed over their head and their head's through their arms, they're going to get a more intensive shoulder stretch as opposed to the straight arms. Plus, again, they're classic wrigglers. If they're uncomfortable, they're going to wiggle around their position until they are comfortable, which is going to lessen the effectiveness of the stretch. So I like elbows on a box, head down. So it can be as simple as a 60 centimetre box in your gym. They can sit on their knees, cross their arms over, so one hand on each elbow, put their head through their arms and their elbows on the box and just relax into that position. And you'll be able to see when it's working, because as their body relax, as their muscles relax, they'll get closer down to the floor than they would if they're holding their body tense. So those are the stretches that I would do. I don't do any pushing. I don't do any adding of weights. I don't do any of that. The progressions would be, obviously with a child that's flat in splits, you can start to add over split. A child that's flexible side splits, you can start to add the sitting up stretch split. I would start small, 10 centimetre increments at a time. Don't go straight from, oh, you're flat on the floor and everything's all good, you're nice and hips are nice and square. Let's put your foot up on this 40 centimetre mat. I think that's way too much, too soon. Most of these kids haven't done a lot of gymnastics, haven't done a lot of stretching. So just keep the over splits in small increments. And it might mean your right leg is your good leg, so you can put that up on 20 centimetres, left leg not so good. Let's put that left leg on 10 centimetres and start with that. Hamstring stretch progression, obviously standing on a beam or standing on a box and stretching down past the level of where their feet are, if they're flexible enough to do it. But I definitely wouldn't be doing that stretch until they can get hands flat, palms flat on the floor, and in a standing hamstring stretch. Does anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, Linda, there's a couple of questions in the chat. First of all, from Paul, he acknowledges that it might be difficult with these younger groups, but do you use any kind of rolling with these guys or use of any elastics with resistance for level 3 and 4?
Yes, I would do that. I find that time often gets away from me when I do my warm downs or my recovery parts of the session. I probably would do more of it with level 4 than level 3. Level 3 kids are generally younger. If they were older level 3s and 4s who wouldn't be just wriggling around on the roller for no reason, I definitely would do that with muscle recovery. I find level 3s and 4s who are young though aren't doing it correctly, and sometimes time gets away from me as well. But yes, we do some work with elastics with resistance and do some work with the roller. Sometimes when the kids do their oversplits, we can get them to put their foot up on the roller. But yes, we can roll down hamstrings, roll down calves just to get them loose. I probably would put that as part of prehab and rehab as well, as part of the conditioning rotation, if they wanted to do some rolling there or they had an injury and needed to do some physio work. Absolutely. I just would make sure everything I do, there has to be a reason for it, and they have to get something out of it. So rolling around on the floor in a warm down while they chat to their friends about who's at school tomorrow, I find pointless. I think if it's a targeted roll down session or a targeted elastic session, definitely, yes. I hope that answers your question, Paul. Sorry.
Yeah, he said thank you for that. Another question that's come through.
With the shoulder stretches, I've with extremely tight shoulders and can't seem to stretch them out. If they've got really tight shoulders, I would avoid the bridge stretch. If they're really tight in their shoulders, I would isolate the shoulders to stretch, and I would take the bridge out of it, because kids with tight hips and shoulders, as I said, overcompensate, the back overcompensates. So I would definitely do the stretching with the elbows on the box. You can do the stretching with them lying flat on the floor, on their belly with their hands behind their head, and just gently lift their elbows off the floor. There's a lot of stretches that you can do. You can probably do the bridge, but with feet on a raised surface, Cortana, so that they can get their shoulders actually pushing out. But the other thing is, a lot of kids who are tight, they don't hold the position, they don't hold the desired stretch for long amounts of time, and they're only doing that because they're uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable for them to do that stretch. But just make sure you've got a reasonable stretch time on there. Stretching their shoulders when they're really tight for 5 seconds is really not long enough. They really need to be doing a 30-second stretch time. Hands on the box works, but sometimes kids who aren't flexible in the shoulders bend their arms. So you could probably do the elbow one with their elbows with their arms straight and elbows with their arms bent, just to eliminate that bent arm position from straight arms. Does that help, Cortana?
Yeah, she said thank you, Linda.
No worries. We've all got kids with tight shoulders. I would just suggest kids with tight shoulders not do an enormous amount of bridges and things, because their shoulders are tight, their back's doing the work, and you don't want to overload backs, definitely not.
There was also just a note about teaching them to breathe in and breathe out on your count while helping them to stretch. Did you have any tips around that, Linda, about how long they should be holding their breath for, or if that's a technique that you do use?
I don't actually use the breathing technique. No, I don't. I am focused at level 3 and 4. The positioning is vital because you're setting up habits for higher level. I would probably have them, the level 3 and 4 very good at having a chat to each other when they come into the gym at the warm up, and they come into each other, going home and not seeing each other for another couple of days. They love to get their chat on. But I haven't actually used breathing in and out. I have been part of programs and worked with coaches who have done that. But generally, I'm more about getting the positioning right. I think maybe if it was an older kid or a kid in a higher level, that's something I would definitely focus on. But for little kids, just getting them to stop wriggling and stay in the one position, in the correct position, is kind of my focus. Does anyone who's in this session use breathing in, breathing out as part of their stretch or their warm down or flexibility rotation?
Kelly was the one that had put it into the chat if she wanted to take herself off mute.
Sorry, I just have to figure out how to do that. That's all. No, I just find that when the kids are stretching, I do walk around and I'm constantly poking them and moving them, what have you, into my positions that I want and instructing them on that. But I will count for them and get them to breathe in and breathe out, just so that there is a moment where they're relaxed and their muscles can stretch and will improve a little bit. I do have level 6 though, so that they are a little bit older, as Linda said. So.
Yeah, I agree. I would absolutely agree. That's the good time. And the good thing about it is when you say to them, now we're going to breathe in and we're going to do this, then they have to stop talking, right?
Right.
So generally that can work, yes. But with little level 3s and 4s, they're busy on, their mind is on, there's my mum, where's your mum?
Yeah.
There's her car. I usually don't worry about the breathing because it's more about the fact that they're twisting their head 180 degrees behind them to see the little girl behind them all.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely, with older kids, definitely level 6 and 7, you could put that in there, definitely. I think that would work because it takes the focus off them as well being in an uncomfortable position. They tend to think less about, oh my goodness, this stretch is hurting my legs, and more about listening to you, listening to the coach, and actually stopping for a second and actually, making their body relax.
I have tried it with my little development ones, and sometimes it works, but like you say, it's a momentary thing with them.
It's like, it's like for 2 seconds. Even when you count. Even when you count them. You go, everybody breathe out. 1, 2, and after 2 seconds.
Miss Kelly.
Yeah, they're talking about something else to someone else. Anyway, all good. Does anyone else use anything along the lines of what Kelly has said with little kids, with level 3s and 4s? Does it work?
No questions coming through on that, Linda. There was another similar question about how to, let me just grab it up, 1 second. There was a question about someone that has a gymnast whose physio suggests her neck wasn't strong enough and she needs extra strengthening exercises to strengthen it. It seems like a physio questions, but she was asking for any advice around that, any neck strengthening exercises, as she was getting headaches after sessions.
Ah, right. Okay. And then I've just seen Bryony has given a good tip there with neck sit-ups.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that from someone else's as well.
that a
for
physio
other
thing, Bryony?
gymnasts. Actually, John Mitchell suggested it to some kids that if their head was, a bit floppy, doing some
okay.
like glide kits, or you got a kid whose head falls back a bit. So if you like lie on your back with your head off a step or a box somewhere, and then they go chin to their chest a little bit, making sure
That's
the head's
good.
not falling back. So it's just like a little bit of a neck sit up, just so
And
that
it's just isolating
forward.
their head. So they're
Yeah.
not able to use their shoulders or their stomach
Yeah.
muscles to compensate. They have to use those muscles in and around their neck.
Yeah.
I would definitely, that's a
One
good
that I heard
idea.
of.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's something that should be, as coming from the physio as well, Linda, if you would agree. It seems like that's all the questions at the moment that have been coming through. Just mindful that it has hit 3 o'clock now.
Yeah. We're done. That was it. Can you change it to the next slide? Thanks, lovely.
Yeah.
So moving forward, if you're coaching at level 5 and 6, I would like to do some similar sessions for level 5 and 6. But at this stage, if you're working with level 5 and 6, you really need to know that you need to be an advanced coach. And I get a lot of emails from people who ask me, where do I start? What do I do? I'm coaching level 4 this year, but my squad next year, they're going to be in level 5. What do I need to do? You need to start the process of becoming an advanced coach. The best place to start is to find a mentor. Now, we don't all have them in our club. We're not all in big clubs with lots of coaches. So if you don't have a mentor, maybe look at other clubs in your region, or perhaps contact Gym New South Wales, and we can certainly help put you in touch with a mentor. But to start with, working with the mentor, talking to the mentor can usually help a lot. It can help with your planning. They can help with skill development. Even something that you understand but you've never spotted that before. So working with a mentor is a really good place to start, and they can give a lot of insight prior to starting the process of sitting your course. But if you do need to sit a course and you are interested in coaching at level 5 and 6, please remember that you do need to be an advanced coach, not an intermediate coach with advanced module 1. You need to be a full advanced coach. So if you're needing to start that process, if we ever able to come out of lockdown, you maybe need to shoot Anne an email, and she'll be able to help you with the advanced coaching process. Well, that's it for today, team. I thought, yes, Linda, you can get this on time. Come on, Linda, you can do it. No, I didn't. Too much talking for Linda. So if anyone's got any questions before we finish our session, this will be available to everyone. The PowerPoint will be available to everyone, and the recording of the session will be available to everyone. For those of you who've done 3 sessions, I thank you all. I've had a great time talking just to myself because that's all I can hear. I'd love to see you all and do some practical sessions in a gym sometime, or we can all get together and bring our athletes and do some drills and skills. That would be absolutely ideal for me. But for the moment, I hope that helps you all while you're busy there in lockdown. And look, if we can get some level 5 and 6 sessions running, we will definitely do the same kind of format for level 5 and 6. We've got a few things coming up in the next couple of weeks, but certainly after that, if anybody needs help with level 5 and 6, we can structure it the same and make sure it's level 5 and 6 content, which is good news. Thanks, team. Thank you very much. I will be good. Stay safe. Hopefully we can all go back in the gym soon. And for those who are allowed to get their hair cut, I'm going to cry soon if I can't see my hairdresser. So just so you know. All good.
Hi, Linda. Sorry, one more question.
Yes. Sure.
So when we eventually do get back in the gym, how would you treat your group? Would you treat them as a term 1 group of that level, or would you start looking at them, say, as the level below? So for example, with a level 3 group, would you start from a level 2 kind of basis?
I would definitely take it way back to the start of the calendar year that you're in. So if we did, what did we, I think we got through 2 terms almost before we
Something
went
like
into
that.
lockdowns. I would definitely be going back to at least the start of the year, but I would not be even putting a program in place until I wrote my interim program. My interim program is, these are the things that I think they're probably capable of doing, but I'm not quite sure. Some of them, I don't know if your club's been doing Zoom sessions or keeping
Not at the moment.
programs or doing
really.
anything like that. If they've been doing nothing, I would take it way back and I would go very slowly, yes, because moving fast, they're definitely going to have some sort of an injury. So
Yeah.
I would, if it was a level 3 squad that you had this year and they all went into lockdown on the 26th of June and we haven't been in the gym since, I'll definitely go back to January, at least in terms of programming, possibly even the last part of last year.
Sounds
and
good.
just tread carefully, and keep numbers low. The thing that's going to do the most damage when they first come back is telling them to go and do 40 box jumps. They can't be doing that amount straight away. It needs to be very staggered and you know, moving forward slowly.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Linda.
No worries. You're welcome. Does anyone else have anything?
No, it seems like everyone's just saying thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
If anyone else has got a question, just quickly pop yourself off mute. Otherwise, we can just end the recording.
Linda, there's a couple of questions about comps in October. They won't be happening, will they?
I don't have any event information, sorry. You would probably have to give, if it's WAG, possibly Jeff, Marnie or Chris a call. I haven't been part of the event planning. Obviously we're still in lockdown till, what was the last count, late October. So I think that would make events in November very difficult.
Yeah.
But I don't have any information. If you email Jeff or maybe give Marnie a call, she would be able to give you more information, definitely.
I'm pretty sure they'll be off. There's just that you've got a couple of questions there about it, but I'm pretty